What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, and most importantly, please make sure you follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group to help circumvent social media censorship and shadow banning. And with the introduction out of the way, let's get into today's news. And today, we have to take a moment to quickly discuss the comments and critiques of JD Vance towards Governor Gavin Newsom, how valid those critiques were, and as well as that, discuss the foolishness behind the idea that it's too soon to critique Gavin Newsom. We want to get into all of that right now. And also, we're going to take a quick moment to see how Gavin Newsom was essentially left speechless to the critiques of JD Vance. So first, let's jump into what JD Vance had to say. He recently did an interview with Fox News in which he discussed the incompetent leadership of Gavin Newsom and how that led to the disaster of the wildfire being as bad as it became. Let's jump into this right now. And then once again, I'm going to take a moment to jump into some comments from a man by the name of Brett Barbary, who is the Yorba Linda Water District Board member, who validates everything essentially that JD Vance is getting ready to say as it pertains to the lack of preventative measures that have been taken in order to make sure that wildfires do not get as crazy as they just did. But first, let's get into what JD Vance had to say.
Well, I know the president would love to visit California. And first of all, our hearts go out to everybody who's been affected by the storms. I've seen some of these videos of people where, folks have lived in those homes for 25, 30, 35 years and everything is gone. And whatever your political affiliation, it's hard not to see those images and just be heartbroken for our fellow Americans who are going through a very tough time. And I do think, frankly, the federal government has to do a better job. President Trump is committed to doing a better job when it comes to disaster relief. That's true for the hurricane victims and flood victims in North Carolina. It's true for the fire victims in California. We have to do a better job. We need competent, good governance. Now, that doesn't mean you can't criticize the governor of California for, I think, some very bad decisions over a very long period of time. I mean, some of these reservoirs have been dry for 15, 20 years. The fire hydrants are being reported as going dry while the firefighters are trying to put out these fires. There is a serious lack of competent governance in California, and I think it's part of the reason why these fires have gotten so bad. We need to do a better job at both the state and federal level.
Now, a lot of people in the DNC mainstream media is saying that it's too soon to critique Gavin Newsom. You can't do this. Essentially, they're saying it's not fair, but it's all fair when so many preventative measures were bypassed. But instead of discussing that, what they want to do is try to shift the blame to climate change and things of that nature, as well as false flagging from misinformation to disinformation when you're actually telling the truth. Now, before we hop into what Gavin Newsom had to say in response to JD Vance, I want to take a quick moment to play what Whoopi Goldberg had to say on The View as it pertains to her being so upset that people are critiquing Gavin Newsom for what he has done as it pertains to his lack of preventative measures to make sure that these fires aren't as bad as they are. She's going to blame climate change and everything else right now but Gavin Newsom.
There was a fire catastrophe in California. Had to do with winds. You know how they always say, oh, the wind. It actually does. The winds move things and sparks move things. And it doesn't matter how much water you have if 900,000 buildings go up at the same time. Now, having lived in California, having lost every house save for one that we ever lived in, I take great offense at pointing fingers. You should be pointing fingers about how can we help?
Yeah.
It's too soon to be saying, oh, it's Gavin's fault. It's nobody's fault. It's like us taking seriously that there are, magic lasers in the sky that direct the weather. That doesn't work. It doesn't happen. This is a catastrophe, and this is what's happened. And let's try to figure out how to work towards not having it happen again. But, we don't control Mother Nature. Mother Nature doesn't give a damn what we want. Mother Nature does what she does. And if you're in the way, this is what happens. And California is chock full of people.
Now, she's saying that we can't control Mother Nature, but Gavin Newsom could have controlled what he did as it pertains to preventative measures. And I keep saying preventative measures, and I promise we're going to get into that next. But first, before we hop into them, I want you to see and listen to how when Gavin Newsom was brought up the critiques of J.D. Vance towards him, he was left speechless. Of course, we all know he's not going to take responsibility for anything, but he just essentially didn't say too much of anything.
California Governor Gavin Newsom responded to another onslaught of criticism from President-elect Donald Trump and his allies as they blamed Democrats' handling of the wildfires, slamming the government as incompetent on Sunday.
There is a serious lack of competent governance in California, and I think it's part of the reason why these fires have gotten so bad.
With respect to the future vice president, I didn't hear his remarks, but I would invite him, as I did Donald Trump, to visit with the community, express empathy of the scale of this tragedy, and be here for the American people that happen to reside here in Southern California.
So that was it. That was all he had to say. I just invite J.D. Vance and the president-elect to come out to California. He just invited them out to take a look around at the destruction that essentially is Gavin Newsom's fault. And now I'm going to get into Brett Barbary, once again, who is the Yorba Linda Water District Board member, right? He is one of them, at least. And I want you to take a moment to allow him to educate us on the preventative measures that could have taken place, but didn't take place. Gavin Newsom knows and understands all this stuff, but chose to ignore it. Let's take a listen to this right now.
I'm going to get a little global here and look at things from the state level. Statewide, they don't allow proper management of forests, weed abatement, brush abatement. And so you have buildups around the state. And the example in Yorba Linda, we have the Chino Hills State Park. That's a state park, so you can't do brush abatement there. So it's just dead tinder waiting for a spark. And once it hits and in a wind, it's going to blow and go through. So I think you probably had quite a bit of that. You had a lot of buildup of this brush, and the state doesn't allow it. Same thing with the forest. It's why other states with big forests that do proper management, they don't have the same issues. Second thing is the state, there's a war against natural gas and getting rid of natural gas. If you get rid of natural gas, you lose electricity. How are you going to move water around? You can't really store enough propane. Natural gas, you have lines going all over the place where you can keep these generators running. If you have a diesel one, that's difficult to refill those as well if you have to run them for 2 or 3 days. The other challenge is, and we've had to put in 4 natural gas generators in the last couple of years, just getting them approved by the AQMD is a challenge. So you have air quality issues. And I would think running a natural gas generator to prevent a fire is going to cut down on emissions far more. But that's another issue. But then you have to go even bigger on the whole water system in this state. We're not building enough storage. We're not building enough facilities. We're not proactive anymore. As a state, we used to be proactive. Governor Pat Brown really was a champion when it came to building infrastructure in this state. If you look at the great water projects in this state, first big one was Hetch Hetchy in the early 1900s. Then you have the LA Aqueduct in 1913. Then in the 1930s, Metropolitan was formed for Southern California. We built the Colorado River Aqueduct. In the 40s, they built the Central Valley Project to bring ag water to Central California in the breadbasket. And then in the 60s, we built the State Water Project, which was mostly completed in 1973. We had 20 million people in the state then. The very top way of, technology-wise, of storing music, 8-track tapes, right? 1973. And I forgot to bring mine to show people because most people don't know what it is. Look it up, Google it. Today, on my little cell phone, I have 9,000 songs. An 8-track tape holds 9, 10 songs at most. Why is it our technology for storing music has advanced in the last 20 years, but our water infrastructure has not changed a bit?
That is completely ridiculous. And it hasn't changed a bit because there is so much red tape concerning the foolishness around climate change and protecting the environment that they cannot and will not do the things that need to be done to prevent catastrophes of this magnitude from happening. So then when they do happen, they'll just throw their hands up and say it's climate change. But then climate change and trying to protect the environment is also the same reason for why we're not going to do anything as it pertains to preventative measures. None of this stuff makes any sense. And this all leads to incompetent leadership. Nothing more, nothing less. Gavin Newsom is not the man for the job, even though currently he is the man doing the job, but clearly had no business being the man doing the job. And with all that being said, that does it for today's news. There really isn't anything left to say. Anyone who's running around here saying that you can't blame Gavin Newsom, at this point, you're just being delusional and disingenuous. So thank you all for joining me today. Please hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Share this video on your social media platforms. And also, don't forget to follow me on Telegram and Rumble at TD Media Group. Both the links to my Telegram and Rumble will be in the description box below. Thank you all for your time. And until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.